Vroom, vroom. Here's your primer on Beef Boys, Baseball's End, Roger Angel, and Super Pretzels, Williams Astudillo, and Mike Trout hypotheticals, waiting for the perfect bat from a volcanic eruption. Ladies and gentlemen, the Effectively Wild introduction.
Hello and welcome to episode 2400 of Effectively Wild, a FanGraphs baseball podcast brought to you by our Patreon supporters. I'm Meg Rowley of FanGraphs, and I'm joined by Ben Lindbergh of The Ringer. Ben, a lot of pod, man. We've done such pod.
There's a lot of pods. Yeah. Wasn't happy with the quality of my whistle there. Let me try again. Oh. No. Just air.
It's not
great. Not a good whistling day for me. I pride myself on my whistling, but not today. But I do pride ourselves on getting to yet another round number milestone, 2400. It's a lot of pods. Here's a question for you. We talked a lot during the postseason about Addison Barger. You learned that he's a lefty and how to say his name and other important facts about him. We also talked about his predilection for pull-out couches, how he insisted, well, didn't insist, he had permission, but he really wanted to sleep on Davis Schneider's couch rather than obtain his own hotel room, and we talked about his reasoning for that. Here's something I saw. The pull-out couch on which Addison Barger crashed before hitting his historic pinch hit grand slam in Game 1 of the World Series will be on display at the Toronto Marriott City Center Hotel overlooking the Rogers Center. If you want to see the, quote, now iconic pull-out couch, I don't know that I would go that far, but if you want to see it, you can go to that hotel and it will be on display in the lobby. Actually, it's already too late. Well, maybe if you hear this right when the pod goes up, it'll be there until November 14th, Friday. So if you can get to that Marriott in Toronto by end of day Friday, I guess, you can see the very pull-out couch where Addison Barger slept the night before his heroics. What do you think? Is this a draw? Is this an attraction? Would you go out of your way to see the pull-out couch?
No, that's insane. I also think, I don't want to make me feel bad, but kind of a bold move on the part of the Marriott. Look, here's my experience, even with nice-ish hotels. I don't know that you want to submit your furniture to like close lobby inspection. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that that's going to bear the weight of scrutiny, but also, like, I know that he had an amazing moment the next day, right? Like in the immediate aftermath of the couch, and we're saying pull out so much more than I'm really comfortable with, but in the immediate aftermath of this, he had a great moment. But they did lose the World Series. You know what I mean? Like
they did, but it was not his fault. He gave his all.
Hardly suggesting that it was Addison Barger's fault. It was not his fault. And I would just like to issue a small correction to your statement. It's not that we learned he batted lefty. We remembered he batted lefty and then insisted on
pre-existing knowledge.
Right. Yeah. And insisted on reminding others of that fact over and over and over again. But so I don't know, Ben. You know, I don't know about that. I think we're doing too much with too many things. You know, the couch, it's a good story, but the couch is just the couch. How do you know? First of all, how do you know it's the couch? How do you know it's the couch?
Addison Barger pull-out couch truther. That could be just any pull-out couch.
It could be just any pull-out couch. And again, I'll return to my earlier statement that it is perhaps not the best idea to submit and subject hotel furniture to prolonged up-close scrutiny.
Yeah, you don't want to take a UV black light to a hotel furniture, probably. Speaking of pulling out.
Okay, wow. Yeah, you probably don't want to do that. And so maybe some clever person who works for that particular Marriott raised their hand in the staff meeting and noted that fact to their boss. And then they were like, you know, we got a new couch, though, in the loading dock, ready to go into a different room. And then the boss goes, well, you put that sucker in the lobby. It's going to look brand spanking. They'll never know the difference. Because here's the thing. Is Addison Barger going to come around and be like, that wasn't the couch?
Would he even be able to tell?
I mean, one, he might not be able to tell. And two, even if he could tell, he's probably off being off-season Addison. You know, he's got family to see. He's got activities to do. I'm making him sound like a child on winter break, but you know what I mean? Like he's got other business to attend to, business that does not involve a couch in a hotel lobby in a city that he probably doesn't live in the off season. So I'm just saying there could be some couch funny business, like a different kind of couch funny business than a hotel couch might normally see. Ayo, see how I did that, but didn't make it. I let the listener make it gross. I didn't make it. You gotta,
much
let him,
more tactful. Yeah, I appreciate that.
You don't have to be graphic all the time. Sometimes it does require that. Yeah. But this time, not so much. So anyway.
Leave a little to the imagination. I think it's cute. I like that the press release from Marriott said.
I just love that there's a press release. There's a press release.
And it worked. Here I am, a member of the press, talking about it.
I know. Giving them exactly what they want.
Speaking of release, no, I'm not doing that.
Oh, God.
What started as a humble spot to lay his head has now become the stuff of baseball legend. And fans can now get up close with the sofa that helped fuel one of Canada's most talked about recent moments.
Get up close?
I don't know how.
What do they?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is like when you go to some European palace and everything is roped off. I'm not sure if you get to lie in the pullout to get the full Addison Barger experience, or if it's just on display and you just sort of survey the pullout and say, yes, history happened here. He slept there the night before his home run.
And I don't mean to suggest that Addison did anything untoward with couch. I'm not trying to, he's not JD Vance. Like, come on, this is a respectable young man. I'm just saying, like, what comes after people see the couch in the lobby, right? They come into the lobby, they see the couch. You probably have to rope it off because typically when you see a couch in a lobby, you got to sit down on the couch because you're wary. You've been traveling all day. Maybe you've had to deal with customs. Maybe you've had a flight canceled. You don't know. People might have been up very early, and so they come into the lobby. They have not seen this press release because why would they see this press release? And they go and there's a line and they're like, oh God, I'm so tired. I am worn by my travels. Oh boy, how convenient, a couch. I'll sit on this couch. I'm going to relax on this couch. I'm going to lounge on the couch.
Comes over yelling at you because you violated the sanctity of the display. This is a priceless artifact.
You befouled the couch.
Yeah, I know. Did they refuse to tuck in the bed sheets? Is it like, did they leave it the way that he left it? Or did they make the bed? Did they get turn down service on the pull-out couch after? Or would that be tampering with history?
No, I don't think they typically do turn down.
I guess not with a pull-out, probably.
Here's the thing. It's not that there aren't pull-out couches in nice hotels, but the hotels that do turn down service, like real turn down service, they're not emphasizing the pull out couch. And here's another question: did Marriott know he was going to be sleeping in there? Did they add an additional guest? Were they like, why?
Yeah, was there a surcharge because there was an extra occupant in the room?
And
that's
at
a
that
good question.
Point, it's like, just get your own room. I mean, to be clear, the moment when Addison should have gotten his own room was like at any moment before he was sleeping on a pull-out couch in the middle of the postseason.
Yes.
But he didn't avail himself of that option for reasons that we're still not satisfied by.
Anyway, it's a 1 week exhibit in the lobby of a Marriott. They probably don't
1 week exhibit.
Have a whole lot of history. It's not as if they sent the couch to Cooperstown.
I was about to say, did they feel the need to display the couch and release and put out a press release because they were like, well, we can't let the Hall of Fame have all the fun. We gotta. And again, did the local Marriott have to clear the language for the press release with corporate? They don't have I can't imagine that the hotel has its own dedicated
communications professionals.
Right.
Yeah. No, maybe it'll be a traveling exhibit and they'll send it around, or maybe, I don't know, if they had won the World Series, would it be like the Stanley Cup and every Blue Jay would have a night in the pull-out couch? I don't know, but I like that they have tried to make this a thing. I'm sure it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek and hyperbolic. And how often really is history made in a hotel that you get to have a display in the lobby? It's all in good fun, I guess. And hey, baseball writers and sports writers, they love their Marriotts, right? They love their Marriott VIP rewards program. So if they're doing an off-season Marriott tour, they could stop in Toronto by Friday and see the couch.
Can I pick a very particular bone that I'm going to get no sympathy for from either you or our listeners?
Okay.
Have I already complained about the fact that the Winter Meetings Hotel is a Hilton? What's up with that?
I think you.
What are they doing?
Yeah, you may have mentioned that.
What is that? Why are they doing this?
Know your audience, folks.
It's a Hilton. Yeah. And look, I am sure that they don't care about my satisfaction with the accommodations. They obviously don't care because they booked the media hotel into a place that has like 4 rooms, all of which have already been booked. Real dire straits for some of our pals in the media. Not me, I booked early, but for other people. So there's that. But also, it's not just media people. You ever meet a scout that didn't want Marriott points? You sure have not. You ever meet a front office person who doesn't want Marriott points? Mm-hmm. No, you haven't. You know how many people who work in baseball go on their honeymoons because of Marriott points? Stay in very nice places that they might not otherwise be able to afford because they're Marriott points. It feels aggressive. It feels targeted. It feels purposeful. They're already making me fly to Orlando.
I remember an article that Joe Lemire wrote about the origins of the sports writing media's fascination and love affair with Marriott, which I will link to if anyone's curious, which they probably aren't. So we can move on. But,
there's every bit. Oh, I'm sorry. You made me talk about the couch press release, so I get to beef ever so briefly. I'm just mad because I know that I'm going to go and get like some Paleolithic version of COVID when I have to go to frickin' Florida. I am. I get to complain about Florida because I live in Arizona and we're like kindreds in a way that I'm not comfortable with.
The couch is iconic. Don't denigrate the human interest appeal of the couch. So we have a draft to do. We're going to do our annual free agent contracts over under draft. I have a little stat blast to give you. And speaking of the winter meetings, of course, Scott Boras will hold court there at the non-Marriott. But he gave a teaser, a taste of the material that he is workshopping because the GM meetings are this week. And he sort of splits it up now. And I don't know if he saves his best material for the winter meetings where there's a bigger crowd, but, he tests the waters. And so we got a couple bits of Boras wordplay, at least, on Wednesday. On Alex Bregman, nobody wants a Brexit on Alex Bregman possibly departing Boston. Nobody wants a Brexit. And then, as reported by our pal Alex Spear, he then weaved a lengthy explanation about Dunkin' and Starbucks into his description of Bregman providing the right blend in Beantown. So I guess you sort of see what he's going for there, maybe. It's not always clear. I think because of Alex didn't transcribe it fully. But yeah, he's talking about coffee and then
But he's not suggesting that you should like get a Dunkin' Donuts cup of coffee and get a Starbucks cup of coffee and then do like a blend of those cups of coffee. I don't. He is simply...
I don't.
Then why
I hope not.
He bring up Starbucks
I don't think
at all?
It's a good question, but I'm not that interested in the answer. And he also touched on Cody Bellinger, another client of his. Alex Blue Sky posted, Boris-a-Palooza at the GM meetings begins with a lengthy celebration of Top Gun in describing Cody Bellinger, an urban maverick. With no qualifying offer attached to Bellinger, Boris says, that goose is gone.
Okay.
I feel like I need more context. I need a full transcript to get where he's going with this.
But see, here's the thing. Goose in Top Gun, Goose died. Goose
spoilers. Yeah, it's true.
Goose. Oh yeah, sorry to spoil Top Gun. I am so sorry to spoil the 1986 film Top Gun.
Yeah.
Goose dies. He doesn't make it. He
R.I.P.
crashes, and then it's very tragic.
Yeah, it's sad.
Played by a young Anthony Edwards. Okay, but so Goose dies, and it's like a bad thing in the movie when Goose dies. It sort of motivates the whole back half of the movie, and then is like a propulsive element to the sequel, which is fantastic. What a good pair of films those two are. Yep. Enjoyed every minute of it with them flying in an ambiguous enemy's backyard in the second one. That was great. But like, where are they? We don't don't know. We can guess, but we don't know. It's a weird way to put it because it's like, okay, so I assume that in his, because he's calling him an urban maverick, so Alex Bregman is the Tom Cruise character, which makes sense because they're the same height. So, you see a good comp there. That's a joke about both of them being short little kings, the two of them, short little men. They're both very small. So Maverick, he's an urban maverick. Okay. And then the goose is gone. But like, Alex Bregman should be happy about not being burdened by a qualifying offer anymore. But Maverick is canonically devastated by Goose dying. So, Scott, I don't think that you've seen that movie, or at least maybe not in a very long time. So I'm not with him on that one. He could do something like, he could be like, no, negative Ghost Rider, the pattern is full. Like, that was the qualifying. He could have played with that, as like that was the qualifying offer, like there being other stuff on the deck, because they can't land when the pattern is full. Right. I know. You brought this up and you're like, no, I will not.
I've seen Top Gun. You're not spoiling anything for me.
I cannot spoil a movie as old as I am. There is no way to do that. Top Gun and Meg, same birth year.
It feels a little played out, and maybe we've done our part in playing it out, but he really has. He's fully invested. It's not played out for him, and really, it's for an audience of one to some extent. I know he's doing this to get attention for his clients and to get people to post about it and talk about it on a podcast, and maybe he's doing it for his client. Sort of, but I feel like he's doing it largely for himself, as we talked to him about when he was on this podcast and we interrogated him about it. One that I did like, Scott, on Dylan Cease, unlike the other Dylan, he is exclusively electric. So you got your Dylan going electric wordplay there from Scott Boras in the year 2025. That's clever. That's creative. The amusing thing is that he's dropping all these lines and everyone's faithfully transcribing them. And if you look at Alex Spear's timeline here, he's, reporting the Brexit and the Beantown and the Irvin Maverick and that goose is gone. And then it just says, Boris says Imai will post on November 19th. That's it. He had nothing for Tatsuya Imai with Imai.
Honestly,
he could have gone in any number of directions. I mean, maybe for cultural sensitivity reasons.
Yeah, I was going to say
for the best.
I think it's probably better to just stay away from wordplay with like the Japanese and Korean players' names, because I'm not saying it can't be done in a way that isn't problematic, but it can go so fast in that direction, and so I think it's better to just play that one straight. It is interesting that he's going to post on the 19th, because that means that his deadline to sign is like right after New Year's. It's just a weird, you're in a strange spot, but whatever. His deadline to sign is like a Saturday, because New Year's is on like a Thursday or something this year.
He had some lines about Tarek Skubal as well.
The fans in Detroit want the Tigers to build a Tarek barrack,
As in, barracks, where soldiers stay, I guess.
But you can't just rhyme it and be like, oh, it's close to a word that's real.
I think a barrack, I think that's a word. Usually it's barracks, but I think you can have a singular barrack, a single barrack. I think so.
But barracks, it's a word. An S on. No, wait a minute.
I think barrack is a word. I think it's just that usually you have multiple barracks, and so you say barracks, but I believe barrack is a word, so I'm giving him credit for that one. It's only a little unusual. It's a word.
It is a word, but it's not the way. Ben.
Creative license, And he also said, this one makes even less sense to me.
Little Caesars running around town saying, "Sai Sai."
That's
what?
It's not like "Sai" rhymes with pizza or something. That's not even.
No.
He also said, he's of course talking about the potential for an extension for Skubal in Detroit.
When you're in these situations and you go through it, all we know is that we hear mostly from the fans, and the player hears from the fans, and it's kind of like it should be Scooby done, right? And if not, I think the fans would certainly think it's a Detroit doink if they don't.
Okay, that's better. That's better.
I guess it's better.
It's better because it's...
Yeah, he's going for it.
Yeah, but like, I think that this has outlived its usefulness. And I think on some level, his people know that. And that's why, despite the increasing popularity of his stand-up at these events, they are continuing not to mic him.
They don't want this to circulate that widely.
They don't mic him. It's wild. And some of these have made me laugh over the years. And I thought the Brexit one was good. I liked the Brexit. The Brexit one almost redeems the entire exercise this year because I think that one is strong, although it is evidence that this is mostly about the, the references and enjoyment of like a middle-aged white guy. Because it's like, is Alex Bregman like, you should make a Brexit joke like in the year of our Lord 2025.
Right.
It's really relevant humor, sort of like Top Gun. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what he should do is he should play the winter meetings availability straight. He should just talk about his guys and where their markets are and what he's hoping to get done that week. Just play that one straight. Do a couple in a row where you're just like, telling the assembled reporters about your dudes. It's not like people are going to stop going to his availabilities. It's still a newsworthy event. But like, let people kind of take a breather and then come back. It's like how, if you watch the same, I'm a believer in, despite my capacity to enjoy repeat viewings of things, like you should take every other year off from the Muppet Christmas Carol because you'll get played out. You'll get tired of it. And then you can emerge Scott Boras like a year from now and be like, my pawns, which did not die. You're not enjoying my references today. It's really something. You're like, no, I'm not going to yes and Meg. No interest in that today.
Yeah,
no.
I'm giving you the reaction that perhaps people should give Scott Boras, but we're as guilty as anyone. Last one I saw, this is not so much wordplay. I mean, this is just pure alliteration here on Pete Alonso.
I think Pete, at this point in his career, he's about winning, no doubt. Had that question a lot. There's no doubt that Pete's pursuers are primed to pay the power piper. Pete picked the perfect period to play preeminently at a primary position. A playoff parched plethora will pounce to participate in the polar plunge.
Okay, wait. No. You can't do the Piper thing and then recommit to the polar bear thing. You can't do both. You need to pick a lane.
Oh, yeah.
Are
He's
you doing
it
the
all.
alliterative thing? Are you doing the polar bear thing? Are you doing the Pied Piper thing? You can't.
The answer is yes. Yes, he's doing all of the above.
Scott.
The impressive thing, I watched a little clip of that. He does not appear to refer to notes in the midst of that recitation. So
Isn't that more embarrassing?
Yeah, he's off book. He memorized his lines here, and he's waiting for people to tee him up, and he has this grin on his face, just waiting to deploy these lines. And then he tries to make it seem off the cuff, like, oh, good question. Didn't realize you'd ask me about Pete Alonso. Let me think off the top of my mind. What can I come up with here? And then he breaks out this, which he evidently memorized and practiced, to use another P word.
I'm gonna deploy an analogy here that might be a little strange, but I'm gonna do it anyway. So there's this phenomena that you see at spring training games and also at fall league games of the autograph hounds who will try very hard to get players to sign cards and caps and balls, etc. And some of this is all like excited fan behavior. Some of it is degenerate eBay guys and the children that they deputize to their project. And the other day, I was at a fall league game and I saw two guys. They were middle-aged men. So, presumably they have taxes that they have to worry about at some point in their year. And they had their big book. They had their big book of things. And they are going from dugout to dugout, side to side, depending on like who's going to be exiting the field potentially with the ball to throw. And also to like kind of pay attention to the bullpens. Can they get a guy as he's like getting ready to come in or out of the bullpen, or as he's standing there, etc. And they were like fast walking, they weren't running. They were trying to still be at a speed that one could describe as walking, but clearly with the urgency and intent of a person who wants to break into a sprint that can only be facilitated by real running shoes. And I sat there and I thought to myself, just run. What you're doing is more embarrassing because it suggests that you are aware of the optics of what you're doing and understand them to be at least a little socially off given your age. And so you're trying to fly under the radar, but you're still basically sprinting. So just commit to the bit and run. So maybe Scott Boras should just keep doing his thing. Maybe that's what it means.
Well, that's a good note. We'll see if he takes it under advisement for the winter meetings.
But it's like, the reason it's the same is like, you're memorizing a script, Scott, but you're trying to stay appear off book, but spontaneous. I don't know. It's right. It's not washing over me the same way that it normally does. I'm not feeling the charm the way that way I'm often willing to find. Maybe it's just and if it's that you're not yes-anding me. And so I'm not yes-anding Scott. It's really your fault.
Yeah, if the charm is wearing off for us, then that's not a great sign for Scott, because we were firmly on Boris Island when it came to monitoring these bits of wordplay, if you can call them that. Okay, I wanted to mention a few things. One is that I wrote a lengthy ode to / takedown of the Colorado Rockies. Hard to say which it is. It's kind of both. It's kind of an appreciation plus a lament all wrapped up together, because I do kind of appreciate that we all collectively have the Colorado Rockies as just a shared punchline. Not Rockies fans. They'd probably prefer that they just actually watched a good, competently run baseball team. But at least they've got some things going for them. Coors Field is nice, There's some cheap beer there sometimes, good scenery, etc. But I appreciate, we talked a little bit about the DePodesta. That's the one I meant, hiring. And I kind of went long on that and talked all about how just weird the Rockies are, and just how one of a kind and singular and behind the times they are. And I'm glad that we have an outlier, because I think if DePodesta modernizes the Rockies, and it's not like he's going to snap his fingers and suddenly they're going to be good, and whether they will ever be good and competitive and forward thinking while Dick Monfort owns that team and meddles in it, I have no idea. But I think if and when the Rockies eventually start operating more or less like other teams and sounding like other teams, I think I'll miss that, because there is so much conformity in the front offices, not just the demographic makeup, but the way they talk and the way they operate and evaluate players and acquire players. And then you have the Rockies who are just doing their own thing, just marching to the beat of their own drum. And it has not worked out for them. And they do seem to finally belatedly realize that they can't just keep doing what they're doing. And they did finally make an external hire. But even then it was weird. And as we said, they tried to take a more conventional approach to getting their next baseball operations leader. And they had a bunch of finalists and people they were interested in and talking to that were very expected. And any other team, if they had been interested in the same candidates, you would have said, yep, that makes some sense. And then ultimately those candidates didn't get the gig and reportedly dropped out and pulled out of the process in some cases, or turned down an offer. And then they pivot to Paul DePodesta, who, of course, had been entirely out of baseball for almost a decade and has not run a baseball operations department for 2 decades. And that was weird. And there was a part of me that was pleased that the Rockies are still strange and just still an absolute outlier. And I really will miss that, because someday the Rockies will be good again and they'll be normal again. But the headline on my piece was the Colorado Rockies cannot and must not be normal. And I find that I'm now invested in them staying not normal, that I want them to be weird for as long as possible, so that we have one. Because there used to be a number of teams that were seen as sort of behind the times or old school, or like they didn't know what they were doing. And the Rockies are kind of the last bastion of that, where an outsider could credibly say, I could do a better job than they're doing right now. And I kind of appreciate that that's still out there. So, long may they be weird is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think I'd like them to be weird in a little different way than this, If I were being honest, because here's the thing, there'll always be some weird. They play on the surface of the moon, right? Like
True.
they
There's
have environmental weird. I'd like to see that weird manifest in a fun way where it's like, oh wow, we hired like a good and well-resourced front office, and it involves them coming up with creative ways of overcoming the obvious environmental deficits attendant with where we play baseball. That'd be great.
That would be cool. Yeah. If there were one weird trick to conquer Coors Field and they figured that out and it became an advantage instead of a disadvantage, that'd be interesting.
Or even just several, but instead we have this. I don't know. I see what you mean, but I do think that, like, I don't want to be a negative Nancy, but there's just only the 30 of them right now, and so like seeding a whole franchise to bad weird. That strikes me as defeatist. I don't care for it.
I kind of think, though, that, yes, I mean, the Rockies, the vibes are bad in some ways, but compared to other teams, they're not as bad because, like, they're not John Fisher or Bob Nutting.
Sure. They're not, they're not as bad as the A's, although the A's on-field product is like, it has some stuff to recommend it.
Far better than the Rockies, yes. Yeah. But John Fisher is incompetent and callous or cruel, and Bob Nutting is incompetent and miserly, and Dick Monfort is merely incompetent. They're trying and failing, and in some ways that's more wholesome than the teams that aren't trying. So, and it's not like dead in Coors Field. It's a nice place to see a game. There's some silver linings and saving graces, and I just feel like, if the last holdout modernizes and there's no longer a team that kind of becomes a punchline, there are always going to be bad teams relative to other teams. I mean, that's just the way that competition works. Some teams are up, some teams are down, some teams are better run than others. But to have a true outlier like this, I'll miss that kind of lingua franca, kind of just common shared reference that we all have to the Rockies just not knowing what they're doing. Dick Monfort just emailing fans back whenever they reach out to him, taking their suggestions about player acquisition. It's wild. So some part of me is sort of nostalgic for when teams didn't know what they were doing, because it's like the war has been won to the extent that there was one about like how to run a baseball team. And so just having one isolated, and it's not even like the Rockies are out there being anti-analytics necessarily. It's not like they're crusaders, they're not saying like everyone else is doing it wrong and we think that, you have to have some traditional baseball values or something. They're just so divorced from everything. They're on their own wavelength. And so there's not much at stake in it, whereas in the past it was kind of a culture war. And if whoever at the time was seen as regressive, if it was the Royals or whoever else, it was more adversarial, and it was more of a just, we have to teach them the right way to do this, or they're dismissing us and we're right and they're wrong. And now it's just like, the Rockies, we don't have to feel that way about them. We could hope for the sake of their fans and their players that eventually they get good and figure out what they're doing. But when there's just no team anymore that feels like it's from the Stone Age, I think I'll miss that.
Now, I will point out that you are bemoaning the potential loss of a lingua franca for incompetence to be headed by the man who was prominent in literally the Cleveland Browns front office most recently.
It's true.
So I think, you're going to have some time to adjust, put it that way.
Yeah. Well, you could all read my Rockies treatise if you're interested. I'll link to it on the show page. But one little stat blast that I did for that article with the help of Kenny Jacklin from Baseball Reference. So we all knew it was weird that Paul DePodesta was coming back to run a baseball operations department after so long away. And it will be 21 seasons. When next season starts, it will have been 21 seasons since his last season at the helm of a baseball operations department with the 2005 Dodgers. So long ago that columnists were calling him a computer nerd and Google boy, and people were actually paying attention to columnists. That's how long it was. There were columnists in newspapers. So
was it Platschke? I love how he's just getting sideswiped.
It was partly Plaschke, yes, and also the late T.J. Simers. That's how long it was ago that he is the late T.J. Simers now. But I wanted to know, was there precedent for this long a gap between seasons as the head of a baseball operations department? And I asked Kenny about this, and he used the Baseball Reference database to answer this question. And the answer is no. This is unprecedented. And not only that, but this is a 50% longer gap between years at the helm than anyone else has ever had. 21 seasons. The previous record was actually Paul DePodesta's predecessor in Oakland and then boss in San Diego and New York, Sandy Alderson, who went 11 years between his time with the Mets and the A's. Or no, 14 years. 14 years was the previous record. That was Sandy. And DePodesta is half that longer again, 21 years. So 14 years was the record, and there were 10 gentlemen, they were all men, as you might imagine, who went at least a decade between stints at the helm of a major league front office. And that's it. So no one has even come close, which just cements in my mind that the Rockies are just doing their own thing. And so it's Sandy Alderson going to the Mets. It's John McHale with the Expos in 1979, Bill Stoneman with the Angels in 2000, Dan Duquette with the Orioles in 2012, Whitey Herzog, best known as a manager, but was a GM with the Cardinals and Angels, Henry Peters with the Orioles, 1976, Mike Port, Red Sox, 2002, Sid Thrift with the Orioles in 2000, and Bill DeWitt with the Reds, 1961. These were all the comebacks from a decade or more of not running a baseball operations department. And there is some reason for hope there. There's some positive precedents there. Even Sandy presided over the Mets winning a pennant, and McHale and Duquette helped bring their teams back to the playoffs, and Bill Stoneman won the Angels' first World Championship in 2000, and Gene Michael is on the list also, and he, of course, engineered the foundation of the Yankees dynasty when George Steinbrenner was suspended in the early 90s. So, Frank Lane, Trader Lane gets in there too with the Brewers in 1971. So some good news, some bad news.
Yeah.
Largely good news. Whitey Herzog in his second go-around, when he was with the Angels, he was kind of, had all sorts of strife and discord with ownership, and then didn't last long. And then I had a quote from an agent who said at the time that he just couldn't cross the bridge to this new era, essentially, of the 90s instead of the 80s. And that's a concern with DePodesta too, because it's night and day, 2005 to 2021. But even if you look at the last time he was in a MLB front office, which really was functionally 2015, early 2016 was when he went to the Browns. That's a long time too. That was like one season of StatCast. The ball has changed multiple times since then. The rules have changed. Player development has changed. The major league meta, the tactics that are prevailing, everything has changed. And he said in the press release, he had a quote about how I've always kept an eye on baseball. It's like, good. That's something you would want probably in your top baseball operations executive, keeping an eye on the sport. That's good. Maybe even multiple eyes if you have them might be better. But he's like, oh yeah, baseball. I've kept up on that. But look, I'm sure that he has, and he has people who can help him with that. But that's a lot of catch up to do. And if you're hiring someone specifically to help catch you up as an organization.
Right.
You know, Walker Monfort, his quotes were all about like, we have to look at what other teams are doing and we have to import their best practices and we have to learn from them. And so we'll go get someone who can tell us what we're doing wrong and help us do the things that other competitors that have had more success are doing. And then you hire someone who's been working for the Cleveland Browns for almost 10 years. It's just so very Rockies, so quaint.
And look, you know, I've made my thoughts on his hiring known, and I'm skeptical of it working. And I think that like there are parts of his time with Cleveland that he needs to account for and probably never will, or at least will answer vaguely about. And I find that disappointing. But like, I want for Rockies fans for this to work, you know, and I would like there to be another competent front office. I do think that like having maybe for reasons that are a little different than the ones you put forth in your column, but like having a wacky group can be useful because it's like when you get to a point where everything is so optimized and there's, you know, so much consistency, like it can get kind of boring. So I guess, sure, you know, weirdness, as you put it. Although, again, I'd like the weirdness to be the result of like, you know, environmental factors that they can't do anything about than, you know, ownership incompetence, but fine. Like, does he know what a traject machine is? Right? Can he describe...
The Rockies do have one of those, to their credit.
Can he describe how... like induced vertical brake works? And again, like you're right to say that he can learn these things. He's obviously a smart guy. I don't mean to say that he's like a dope, but he's just been worried about like cover 2 for the last couple of years. You know, this isn't his thing anymore. And it's again, so much of putting a good baseball team on the field from the front office's perspective isn't the GM being able to sit and build the model himself. It's hiring the right people and asking the right questions of those people and being able to, you know, grease the wheels in trade and do all of this other stuff. But he's not primed to do that other stuff well, at least from jump anyway, right? Like he doesn't. Who are his contacts in the industry? Yeah. You know, can he call? Does he know who to call in, I don't know, name a front office? No, he doesn't know. And again, he can learn, but it's like if that's what this is about, you know, it's about this guy who you think once he's up to speed is going to be able to like steer the front office in a good direction. Like, why are you bringing him in as the Pobo? Right? Bring him in a more junior capacity. Now, he probably doesn't want to do that because he has a senior role with a storied NFL franchise. But like, that's the trajectory that would make this work. And so again, it suggests that they can't do that because they aren't able to get an actual Pobo.
Right. So other candidates rejected them.
Right. And so I have not been convinced that this is going to work. Now, maybe it will, you know, and again, for the folks of Colorado, I hope it does, you know, and I think it's bad for baseball to have a dope franchise. And we have a couple. I do think it's better to have a dopey franchise that occasionally spends money on players, and the Rockies do that, even though, you know,
dopey, because dope could be construed as good, but dopey franchise.
I can't pull off that application of dope. I'm aware of myself. You know, that doesn't trip off the tongue in a way that people view as credible. So I'm embracing my own limitations here. I do think that the Rockies, you know, they do occasionally spend money. Somewhere in this free agent class is a reliever who was like, but I was counting on
Yeah, exactly right.
I'm not going to get my bag now. So that sucks, you know.
We'll talk about that in a second, I guess. Yes. I also, as I was working on this, I discovered that, I don't know how this shakes out in FanGraphs WAR, but by Baseball Reference WAR, the 2025 Rockies had the second lowest team WAR total of the modern era, just going back to the advent of the AL, essentially, or 1900. The fun fact was spoiled by the 1954 Philadelphia A's, who were at like -4 Baseball Reference war.
Yeah.
And this year's Rockies were at negative 3.8, within range of, once they recalculate the park factors after the fact. And maybe they'll end up at the worst. But that suggests that it really can't get much worse, right? So that's the silver lining, the saving grace, I guess. If this goes badly, well, it's already going about as badly as it possibly could. One thing that will go well is that we can continue to call him Paul DePobo, which I appreciate. And a little bit of analysis that was done by listener and Patreon supporter Andrew M. on our Discord group. He pointed out, because, we've had a lot of fun with Buster Pobo and now Paul DePobo, and you have Jerry DePobo. There's just a lot to work with here. And Andrew pointed out that Poe and Bo are dramatically overrepresented in the Major League Pobo population, which I think we're up to 22 Pobos now. It's kind of incredible how it feels fairly recent that we were all saying, Pobo, what president of baseball operation? What is that? What happened to GM? The title inflation has happened so quickly that now it's like if you're just a GM, you're in a distinct minority. If you're a GM who is actually the top dog in the front office,
the lead decision maker,
fairly rare now. So, which I guess makes sense because once it catches on, it snowballs. Like once you have a couple Pobos, then the GMs are like, well, wait, I have the same rank as this person. Give me the even if I'm not going anywhere, I just want it on my business card.
Especially if you're not going anywhere, right? Like that.
True.
Part of why we have the title creep that we have is that like this is the primary mechanism by which they deny interviews to promising front office folks who want to go elsewhere. They're like, well, we'll give you a title bump, and they normally get a little bump in pay too. But it's like that's part of what has driven the title inflation and also just title madness. Some of these titles, Ben, they're bonkers.
Yeah. Andrew found that surnames containing Po or Bo make up 5 of the 22 teams with a Pobo. So that's 22.7% of Pobos have a Po or Bo in their last name, lending itself. Yeah, it's really unlikely because we have Jerry DePobo, we have Buster Pobo, we have Paul DePobo, we have now Paul Taboni, who's I guess Paul Tabobo.
Paul Tabobo, that's the best one of all.
Yeah, Paul Tabobo. I guess it depends if you need to encompass the full name, then it would be like Paul Tapoboni.
Right, we have to bring rigor to this exercise. That's right.
Yeah, and then there's Alex Anthopoulos, who has the Po, but it doesn't sound like Po usually when you say it, and so it's kind of awkward if you're like,
you can't
Alex
include
Anthopoulos.
No.
Yeah, Alex Anthopoulos. It doesn't quite, but it works in writing a little bit better. Anyway, Andrew found 5 of 22.
Sound like you're about to say, he's a pusher with no brakes. That Unstoppable song. Remember that horrible Unstoppable song?
But I do. I will yes end that cultural reference of yours. So Andrew,
finally, thank God.
He said, as a comparison, the MLB player pool, 1,469 players in 2025, only 1.77% of them, thank you for going out to multiple decimal places, had either Po or Bo in their surname. And so this is dramatic overrepresentation, Po in particular.
Wow.
Yeah. So he finds that only 0.68% of the player pool has a Po, but 18.2% of the Pobo pool. It's just,
my God.
I don't know if this is nominative determinism or if it's just chance, but I really greatly appreciate.
You're not sure if it's just chance? You're not. That's not your go-to explanation.
Maybe
for this?
In the back of your mind, it's just a subliminal Po. I appreciate the opportunity. That didn't really work, but yeah,
I thought it worked.
You get my point. There's just a lot of Po potential here.
I think it works. See how I'm bringing all this generosity to the pod today.
Thank
I'm bringing
you.
all this.
I appreciate it.
I think that this is a profoundly meaningless finding, but an interesting one nonetheless. And I also appreciate going out to 2 decimal places because, like, you gotta have rigor. You can't just be winging it. If you're winging it, you'll never be a Pobo or a Pobro. Or wasn't somebody ahead of baseball ops and we were going to get to call them the hobo? Wasn't there a hobo?
Yeah. Well, we
Hobo.
weren't sure when the Nationals hired Paul Taboni. It was not immediately reported that he was a Pobo. He is, but yes, for a while I was hedging with
there's
hobo.
a hobo.
They are all technically hobos, but it's just not their actual title.
No, I think
Is
that
there
there's
one?
a hobo. I think
We'll
that
have to
there's
look into this.
I think that there's a hobo. Somebody texted me
Okay.
about this. Oh yeah. Okay, wait, I'm finding it. So Buster Olney tweeted on October 22nd about the news that new Angels manager Kurt Suzuki has a 1-year deal. An executive with another team notes with the Rockies seemingly headed toward a hobo. Oh, maybe this is a typo. Toward a hobo hiring.
Okay.
It is funny to envision Paul
yeah.
DePodesta like showing up in Denver with a bindle, you know?
Yeah. We could refer
Like a
to, they
hobo.
are heads of baseball operations, but that's not their actual title, I don't think, like on the listing, on the masthead.
Hobo.
But yeah, I like them
You
both.
know, I know that there's like sensitivity around hobo. I don't mean to be insensitive to our unhoused neighbors. I'm imagining like a cartoon, like Great Depression era hobo with a bindle, like riding the rails, you know?
Yeah.
And like Paul DePodesta took an extra day to get to Denver because he had to find a train that went from Cleveland west.
Yeah.
You know? Like a hobo, like a hobo.
I'd appreciate it if someone went that way. Okay. And just catching up quickly, there was a question we got during the playoffs from Nathan. Did the Mets just set a record for most days in playoff position without making the playoffs? I put this to Michael Mountain, Patreon supporter, sometimes StatBlast correspondent, who said, I'm not confident enough in my ability to retroactively calculate tiebreakers to say definitively most days in playoff position. However, I counted 178 days this season where the Mets were either leading the NL East or no worse than tied with the wild card 3 team. March 28th in a 4-way tie with a 1-1 record, and every day from April 5th to the end of the season, including at the end of the last day of the season. True, they lost on a tiebreaker. And he says that 178-day figure, at least nominally in playoff position, ties a record for a non-postseason team set by, of course, this probably won't surprise Mets fans, the 2007 Mets, who held a 7-game lead on September 12th, but lost 12 of their last 17 games to hand the division title to the Phillies. Yeah, that did happen.
It did happen. I you know, if it wasn't the Mets, though, it would have probably been maybe a different Mets team. It was always going to be the Mets.
Maybe.
You've always been the Mets.
Lightning has struck that team repeatedly, it's true. Also,
That's
a
part of the
question
problem.
from Patreon supporter Jack Morris. Not that one, I assume. In Game 5, the Blue Jays...
That would be wild.
Quite a plot twist, yes, if you were a Patreon supporter.
I would be shocked by that jump scare, you know?
Yeah,
I really
I would too. I'd welcome his support, but I don't expect it. In Game 5 of the World Series, the Blue Jays had scored 2 runs in 3 pitches. Turns out that was enough scoring to win the game because the Dodgers scored 1 run. Is there any way to figure out if that's a World Series record for the fastest winning run scored in playoff or World Series history? And Michael found that, including this year's Game 5, there are 16 games in World Series history where a team scored 2 or more runs in the top of the first inning and didn't allow more than 1 run in the entire game. The quickest of any of them getting there got their last necessary run before this year was 2018 Game 5, when the Red Sox scored 2 runs in the first 6 pitches of the game and won 5-1. That's not just the World Series record, it's the record for any postseason game. But this year's Game 5 is now the record because it took even less time than that. And the game it took the record from was also a simultaneous record holder for both the World Series and the postseason as a whole. All right, we sorted that out. And the last one here is a question that we got from Patreon supporter Robert, who says, in his Cup of Coffee newsletter, this was in mid-October, Craig Calcaterra noted Mike Greenwell's passing. With this observation, Greenwell was a 3rd-round draft pick by Boston in 1982. He broke into the bigs in 1985, and after some time moving up and down between the minors and the majors, stuck for good as the Red Sox everyday left fielder in 1988. He had big shoes to fill, as Boston's 3 previous everyday left fielders, Jim Rice, Carl Yastrzemski, and Ted Williams, would all eventually be inducted into the Hall of Fame. Greenwell wasn't quite on their level, but enjoyed a fine career all the same, all 12 seasons of which came with the Red Sox. So here's Robert's question. In the modern era, what's the longest stretch in which a team's primary left fielders have played their entire careers for that team? So sort of this unbroken string. And I guess it's worth noted that it was not entirely unbroken. Robert did note that according to Baseball Reference, there were a couple of years between Yaz and Rice when Tommy Harper was the primary left fielder. So the Red Sox can't claim a consecutive streak of single-term left fielders from 1946, when Williams returned from World War II, to 1996, the last season for Mike Greenwell, the Gator. So what team would have the longest streak? And I put this to Michael as well. And he found, I'm not sure exactly how Baseball Reference makes their primary fielder determinations for the team seasons pages, but the metric I chose to use was which player made the most starts at this position for the season. Seems reasonable. For cases where multiple players tied for the lead in starts, if any of them was a single franchise player, I counted it as valid. 50 years would be an incredible streak, but as Robert noted, a few things conspire against the Red Sox here. Even after Ted returned from World War II, his streak of patrolling the Green Monster was interrupted by a return to active duty in Korea, during which time Hoot Evers was acquired from the Tigers to fill in. What a hoot. Then Yaz's tenure was interrupted twice, once when he was moved to center field for a season to let the rookie Tony Conigliaro try out left field. Then Tommy Harper was the primary left fielder in 1973 for 1 year before Jim Rice debuted. So the Red Sox longest streak of primary left fielders being single franchise guys is actually 18 seasons from 1974 to 1991, Yaz, Rice, and Greenwell. Baseball Reference indicates Tommy Harper as the primary left fielder in 74, probably because in their calculations they first lock in Yaz at first base. While that is the position he played most often that year, his playing time was split 57% to 43% between first and left, and he still started more games and played more innings in left than Tommy Harper did. So Michael says, I don't have any problem with including 74 as part of the streak. 18 seasons is the record for any team having a streak of primary left fielders being single franchise guys. It is not the longest streak at any position, though. That honor goes to the Yankees shortstops of 1932 to 1954, a 23-year span comprising the careers of Frankie Crosetti, the Crow, and Phil Rizzuto, plus 1 year of wartime call-up Mike Milosevich to connect them. Another 18-year streak is currently active. Cincinnati has not fielded a primary first baseman who wasn't a lifetime Red since Scott Hatteberg in 2007, the year that Joey Votto was a September call-up. Since Votto's retirement, the tradition has been carried on by Spencer Steer. The streak is currently at 18 seasons, but if Steer ends up moving to another team, it would be reset to 15 years through 2022. That would reinstate the Twins as the longest streak of single franchise first baseman at 16 years with Kenter Beck and Scott Stahoviak from 1982 to 97. So the longest streaks at other positions, 18 years for the Detroit Tigers at second base, Lou Whitaker alone from 78 to 95, snubbed yet again from the Hall of Fame eligibility. We got to get into that with Jay Jaffe at some point. Third base, 18 years for the Orioles, all Brooks Robinson, 1958 to 75. Right field, 18 years for the Pirates, all Roberto Clemente, 1955 to 72. Catcher, 17 years, tied between the Yankees with Bill Dickey and Mike Garbark, 1929 to 45. Garbark. And the Cardinals, Yadi alone, 2005 to 2021, Yadier Molina. And center field, 17 years for the Yankees. Makes sense. Joe DiMaggio, Mickey Mantle, 1946 to 62. And lastly, several teams have never had a single franchise player be the primary fielder for them at a given position in any season, mostly expansion franchises, but a few surprising ones. The Diamondbacks never fielded a career-long Diamondback as their primary catcher, first baseman, second baseman, third baseman, or left fielder. The Rays have never fielded a career Ray as their primary catcher. The Rockies have never fielded a career Rocky as their primary left fielder. The Marlins have never had a career-long Marlin as their primary first baseman, second baseman, third baseman, or left fielder. The Blue Jays have never had a career Blue Jay as their primary center fielder or right fielder. The Mariners have never fielded a career Mariner as their primary shortstop or right fielder. The Padres never had a career Padre as their primary left fielder. Washington, never a career-long National or Expo as their primary right fielder. The Mets, never a primary right fielder who was a Met only. The Rangers, never a career-long Ranger as their primary first baseman or shortstop. And the Athletics have never had a primary center fielder who was an A only dating back to 1901. So that's fun. And if you want the shortstop streak limited to integration era only, then the record belongs to the Big Red Machine and Davy Concepcion, 16 seasons, 70 to 85. I was sort of sorry to see the news about Mike Greenwell because I had fond associations with Mike Greenwell for whatever reason. I don't know why, because I wasn't a Red Sox fan, and I barely remember actually watching Mike Greenwell play because his last season was 96. But I think, a lot of Red Sox fans felt fond of him because he came up and he had a big rookie year, and then he had a huge almost MVP year in 88. He was a runner-up in the MVP and an all-star that year and the next year, and aesthetically pleasing stats like career 300 hitter, like just walked more than he struck out, was just like, not quite as good as maybe he seemed like he was going to be originally, and then retired after his age 32 season. But he was fun for a while. I had maybe it was because I had baseball cards of him, and I ascribed a lot of value and prestige to having been an all-star when I was sorting my baseball cards, and Mike Greenwell was an all-star. So I think, there's he's punching above his weight in how fondly fans remember him. Even me, who I was the opposite, the antithesis of a Red Sox fan, also helps to have a good nickname, Gator. That's a good one. Yeah. So R.I.P. Mike Greenwell.
I don't think we need Jack Morris's Patreon support, although he could be doing penance. Maybe he'd be doing.
Maybe we
penance.
could change his mind about some things if he listened. Who knows? Maybe he'd change our minds. Maybe. But R.I.P. Mike Greenwell. Also R.I.P. Jesus Montero. We never mentioned that because we were in the middle of the playoffs. But he obviously had importance to us as Yankees / Mariners fans, and those were the two franchises he played for. And yeah, so young, he got into a motorcycle accident in Venezuela, and he was 35 years old. And you look back at his career, he was just such a huge prospect for the Yankees, and then came up in 2011 just for a cup of coffee and was amazing in that cup of coffee. And then they traded him right away to the Mariners. And obviously, they kind of had some doubts about his career long-term and his defense and whether he could catch and all the rest. It was sort of like a preview of what would happen when Gary Sanchez came up, kind of. But Yankees fans were so excited about Jesus Montero. And then, he went to the Mariners in the Michael Pineda trade and didn't play all that well or last all that long with them, and was just sort of a sub-replacement level guy for him. So it was sort of a sad story of a prospect not panning out the way that he was expected to, but then it became a sadder story of someone who was taken away quite young.
Yeah, feels like, unfortunately every offseason there's a guy or two who has a vehicle-related tragedy, and it's just so sad. No, poor guy, 35, that's way too young, just way too young.
All right, let's dispense with our draft. This is an annual tradition for us that we've been doing for more than a decade. I believe 2014 was the first free agent contracts over under draft. And as usual, we will be working from MLB Trade Rumors Top 50. They've been doing their free agent rankings for something like 20 years. And we've been piggybacking on them for this exercise, where essentially we try to identify points of disagreement with their projections for the free agents' earnings. And then we say over or under. And we each pick 8 players. And the way the scoring works is, if we are directionally right, if we say that someone was over the amount that MLB Trade Rumors projected, and they do indeed make more than that, then we get the difference between what MLB Trade Rumors predicted and their actual total contract amount, and also get a $10 million bonus for picking in the right direction. And that applies to if we pick an under and we're correct on the under, it's the absolute value it's the total discrepancy between the predicted and the actual. If we picked in the right direction, then we get that discrepancy added to our tally, plus the bonuses for being right. And that's it, essentially. And then we add up all of those totals at the end, and whoever has the most on their ledger wins the draft. And you won the draft handily last year.
I did.
So, you cleaned my clock. You had a total of more than 300 million, and I had a mere 100 million. And so you wiped me out there. You made bank on taking the over on the Juan Soto prediction and taking the under on Pete Alonso and the under on Alex Bregman. Those were big gainers for you. And if you get it wrong, by the way, I guess we should note that gets subtracted from your total too. So if you pick over and it's actually under, then it's debited.
And last season, that looked like it was going to be devastating for me because I took the under on Snell, if you recall, and he went way over. And I was like, well, I'm cooked. My goose is thoroughly cooked. And then Juan Soto was like, I got you, girl. And and I won handedly.
Snell was a rounding error for you. Yeah.
Yeah. I am far less confident, though, this year, I got to say, because and I don't want this to read as like a knock on trade rumors, because that's not how I mean it. But, you know, in a lot of years, there are some obvious, at least to my mind, unders to be had. And some of that is that in a lot of years, you have a more impressive free agent class than this one. And so there's just a lot more room to take an under and feel good about it. And sometimes an over. Those are always more fun, although they're rarer, to be candid. But the real tight, a lot of these this year. Really,
I agree. Yeah, it
really
feels like they've really refined their process in a way that is probably good, but might make this draft a little less fun. So if it turns out that they just nailed all of these predictions, then maybe we'll have to retire this draft. But we'll give it one more year and see, because last year there was still some significant discrepancies. But they have 4 bylines on their list now, and it's kind of like their wisdom of crowdsing it a little bit. Like they've got multiple people and they're going through multiple revisions and bouncing things off each other, and maybe that leads to just some less exuberance, perhaps, when it comes to certain cases, or over or underestimating. Through that debate process, you're probably getting fewer outliers, I guess. So whether it's actually more accurate or not, I don't know, but it's definitely closer to my own barometer. So yeah, I don't have a whole lot of picks on my board here where I'm like itching to get the number 1 pick here, because I think it's such a slam dunk, really, which I guess I will get the number 1 pick, because we usually just whoever lost the previous year gets it. Because I
cleaned your clock last year.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I guess I will go and boy, it's like number 1 pick, and nothing's like jumping out at me as the most obvious one.
Right.
But
what are you going to do?
I mean, I guess, and this feels roughly right to me, but I guess just because there's the most potential maybe for it to be under, I guess I'll take the under on Kyle Tucker. Yeah. Just because, it feels reasonable. I mean, they picked, and by the way, we're going total contract size. That's it. So,
you don't have to nail the number of years. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't have to get years and deferrals and opt-outs and incentives. It's just the guaranteed top line number. That's it. So they have $400 million for Kyle Tucker over 11 years, for what it's worth. And it doesn't feel way off to me, but I think there's room, just because it's such a big number, and a much bigger number, like almost double the next biggest number. Yeah. And because of that, there are bigger error bars, I think. And so if it ended up being 350 or something, that would still be a big quote unquote gain for me, even though it wasn't wildly off. So I think I'm going to take Tucker, and, he could end up in that range. I think this exercise is useful. I mean, as we always say, it's not like we're rooting for anyone to do worse in free agency.
Yeah, it's always a weird one, because I'm like, I want the boys to make their their bag, as the young people say.
Yeah, I'm not hoping Kyle Tucker makes less than $400 million or anything. We do this because it's kind of a fun intellectual exercise, and it's something to track and talk about as the offseason unfolds. And maybe sometimes we just are high or low on a particular free agent and want to kind of go to the mat for them a little bit. And that's interesting to talk about. So yeah, I'm taking under on Kyle Tucker. It could end up being fewer than 11 years maybe, right? And maybe the AAV is spot on, but it's just shorter term. Or maybe some of the injury concerns the last couple of years, or him being like a great all-around player, but not dominant in any respect,
Yeah.
it wouldn't take a lot for him to end up under 400, just because we've had Shohei and Soto, with huge numbers. We can't be anchored to that, as we talked to Clemens about last week. Our streak of like having a new high score every offseason probably going to be snapped this winter.
I often, when I diverge from an estimate, it is on the effect of the years on the total guarantee rather than the AAV. Like, I think they dial in the AAV piece of it pretty well most of the time. But when I'm taking an under, it's generally because I think that the contract that they're putting forth is just going to have a shorter duration than what they're proposing. So,
all right, who you got?
Okay. Oh, gosh. I don't want to be this person, but I'm going to take the under on Murakami, who they have at 8 years and 180 million. I do think that he will get a long deal, but I think that, it's so funny the way that the conversation around him is evolving. I know that like the contact concerns with Murakami are becoming a greater part of the conversation with public facing folks. Teams have been aware of his contact issues for a long time. Like, this is not new information to them. And as we talked about with Eric, like, I'm sure there will be a club that looks at his, health issues over the last couple of years and their own player dev and is like, well, the combination of a swing change and just improved health are going to let this guy actualize all that power against big league velocity. But I think that enough teams will be skeptical to put sort of a dampener on his market. And so I'm taking the under there. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's a good one. I'm intrigued by Murakami, obviously. And if you'd asked me a few years ago,
I want him to come be like a power goof. Like, that would be.
Oh, me too.
That would be so fun. But the case that Eric made, I find persuasive that it'll be a little iffy. It might be iffy in a way that affects his market. So,
yeah, if you had asked me a few years ago, I would have taken way over on this, but now there are a few more concerns. Okay, I'm going to take the under on Trent Grisham. Trent Grisham, they have at 66 million over 4 years. Now, part of this is that as we record, the qualifying offer decisions have not been rendered. So there's some chance that he could accept. I saw a report that he probably won't, and I think he probably won't, but, he hasn't rejected it yet. So if he were to take it, well, that would be an easy under for me. But also, even if he rejects the qualifying offer, is he going to do that much better than that with the draft pick compensation attached at that point? I don't know, because offensively, he was kind of a one-year wonder, at least when it comes to the power output that he just showed. And if he's not as elite a defender, like 34 homers, I mean, that was double his previous single season high. So I don't know whether that's the new normal for him at 29 years old. And so if he just goes back to being what he was in the previous 3 seasons, which was good glove guy, below average bat, teams aren't going to pay a ton for that. Like, he was almost kind of an afterthought in the trade, right? And wasn't even starting as regularly until this year. Obviously was very valuable and worked out for the Yankees. But yeah, combination of qualifying offer potential plus draft pick compensation plus teams maybe not buying the power bat. I could see it coming in under.
I was surprised that he got QO'd, candidly, but that was just me. Okay, I'm going to be bold. I'm going to take an over. Ben.
Do it.
I'm taking the over on Edwin Diaz at 4 years and 82 million. I'm taking the over.
Okay.
I think he's going to get more than that. That's why I'm taking the over. I think that the gap, I'm aware of the age piece of it, but, he has vacillated in terms of his performance some, but I think he's just clearly the best relief arm. And as we discussed with Ben, like, that is a segment of the market that tends to do a little bit better than you might expect. And I think particularly for the premium guys who have obvious postseason utility in a way that can really make that kind of play up, I think that they tend to do better still. And I think that, like, my sense of the Mets this offseason is that, like, obviously there isn't another $700 million and change deal on offer for anyone out there. But even if it were, like, I think they will still spend this offseason, but the way that they will do it will be a little more strategic. And I don't know, a lot is going to depend on if Pete Alonso really thinks he can get 7 years or if there will be a paucity of participation in his market.
Ooh,
see how I did?
Were you Scott Boras all of a
See how I
sudden?
did? See how I had the P's? I just had that
Yeah, and you didn't
ready.
practice it
Yeah,
either.
that's what a Gilmore
That was
Girls rewatch will
spontaneous.
do for you. I think he'll do a little bit better, even if it's not a lot better. I think he'll do a little bit better. So I'm taking Diaz. Yeah.
All right. I am going to go with Glaber. I'm dancing with the qualifying offers again here. I'm sticking to my guns on Glaber being underrated. They are projecting him to accept the
I
qualifying
think he'll
offer.
just take the QO.
He very well might, in which case this will do nothing for me. It won't
just
hurt
a
me.
push. No,
I
it'll
guess,
be a
right?
push.
So there's no downside risk here other than the opportunity cost of not making anything, but won't subtract anything. And there's a chance that he won't accept the qualifying offer. The latest reporting I saw was that he hadn't made a decision. So that doesn't help either way. But I think he might reject it and then do better. And if he did reject it, I still think like he's worth more than that. And, not on an annual basis maybe, but if he wanted to maximize the term and get a longer term deal, I think he could or should, and thus would get more than 22 million. So this is purely an upside play, just banking on the possibility that he will not accept the qualifying offer, in which case I think he could, who knows, double or triple this amount. Maybe I kind of overestimated his market last year, and I don't know whether
You and everybody else.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's any more robust this year, even coming off of a solid season. But yeah, I'm going to take a flyer on that.
I don't feel good. I don't feel good about what I'm about to do because I want a rebound from him. But I'm going to take the under on Gallon at 4 years and 80 million.
Yep.
I think the odds of him accepting the QO are low, although I could see him doing it to have a rebound season. But he's in a weird spot because it's like, I think that the concerns about his bounce back are significant enough that the fact that there's draft pick compensation attached to him is going to suppress his market. But I also think he's going to be motivated to leave Arizona and just like try to get right with a different dev group. But I think if he does that, he's not getting 80 million. But I think mostly that's a year's thing rather than a AAV thing. So I'm taking the under on Gallon, but I hope he gets right because I really like Zach Gallen and I enjoyed watching him pitch here. So
yep, I considered that one also. And there's some possibility that maybe he takes a pillow contract kind of thing, just like a make good deal. Yeah, just show that he's healthy and good again and then try to cash in which case then you would cash in because he would be under 80 million. Okay.
Yeah, almost certainly.
All right. Well, I like taking overs. It's more fun.
Yeah,
all else being able to take an over. So I'm going to take the over on Tyler Malley, who
yeah.
they have Tyler Malley at 1 year and 15 million.
15.
Yeah, that's low for Tyler Malley, is it not? I think so. Yeah. So
I agree.
I mean, he had injuries, obviously, like he had a rotator cuff strain, cost him a few months, pitched well when he was healthy, and then returned at the end of the season, which I think is important. Even if you're making 2 starts, just show that you can, right?
Yeah.
And so, after he lost most of 2024 and 2023 with Tommy John surgery, and there's a lot of injury stuff going on here, but when he's pitched, he's been good. And if teams could be convinced that he's more healthy than not, maybe he, given all the injury issues, I guess he could try to reestablish himself as a more durable guy and then get a longer term deal. But maybe he tries to maximize his market now. You never know what will happen when you've had all those injuries. So yeah, I'm going to hope he at least gets a multi-year deal, in which case he should have no trouble exceeding 15.
I feel so bad taking unders, but so many of the unders are more compelling. Yeah. I'm going to take the under on Eugenio Suarez at 3 years and 63. Some of this is a year's thing. Some of this is obviously like the power is so impressive, but I think that there's enough year-to-year variance with him that it's going to meaningfully impact his market, and maybe it just ends up being a year's thing as much as anything else and not an AAV thing. But like, it's not that he wasn't good. He wasn't just a first half phenomenon. He had like a year of good performance from the second half of last year into the first half of this year. But then like it tanked so bad when he got back to Seattle, important grand slams in the postseason aside. And he's 34, or he'll be, next year is his age 34 season. So I just think that it's going to end up being a little shorter than that. But I hope, for his sake, I'm wrong, because he's just, everyone has such good things to say about him as a clubhouse presence and like a mentor. And like the hair is so, I don't understand how he does that. But I'm taking the under on Eugenio, bad as I feel about it. So.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess I'll take an under also. I think I might take the under on Michael King.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know. This could very well...
He's going to be weighed down by my Michael Caine confusion?
Probably not that.
Probably not that.
They have him at 80 over 4 years.
Yeah.
And I could see him wanting to take a shorter term deal. That's right. Basically all this amounts to, because he's coming off a down year. He had injuries.
Injury year,
yeah. He's basically injured every part of himself, or all the arm parts at least. Yeah. Those are the important parts for a pitcher, or among them. So he got a qualifying offer, right? So there's some...
Michael King? I believe so.
So there's a possibility that he might just take the qualifying offer and come back next year and hope to be healthier. So that's kind of part of my calculus here, that might happen, in which case big gain. And then, I guess even if he didn't take the qualifying offer, maybe he'd find that teams were wary. I guess if he wanted to do a short-term deal and then, show that he's healthy, and he might as well just take the qualifying offer, probably, unless he misreads the market and rejects the qualifying offer, and then there aren't really long-term great offers out there for him. Like, if he rejects the qualifying offer and tries to maximize the length, I could absolutely see him getting a deal like 80 million. He's shown a lot of promise and performance in the past, but yeah, I'm just, playing the odds that maybe he will settle for a shorter term arrangement.
I'm going to take the under. I feel so rude, but I'm doing it anyway. I'm taking the under on Kyle Schwarber. They have Schwarber at 5 years and 135 million. And that just feels like 1 year and like $35 million more money than I maybe think he's going to get. He's like, Schwarber's great. Great. Best pure bat available on the market this year?
Yeah.
Do you think?
Yeah, maybe.
Do you think?
Yeah, seems like it.
And I do think that guys like him, speaking of dudes who play up in the postseason, he kind of does, because he's got that power. He can be got, obviously, but it's an impressive skill set. But he's super defensively limited, as in he's just a DH, and so that sort of naturally curbs his market. I think he's just going to end up being a Philly again, if I had to hazard a guess on where he ends up. But, some of the bigger spending teams are probably not going to be in the Kyle Schwarber business, because it's not like he can be a Dodger, can't really be a Yankee. I think that maybe I'll save this thought for a later pick. But yeah, I'm going to taking the under there. Sorry, Kyle.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think if you go by WAR, probably his contract will look like an overpay, but he's just, there's a mystique to Kyle Schwarber.
Oh, sure.
And, all the big moments and just all the homer hitting, like,
Sure.
He'll do better than just a straight sort of WAR-based projection. But even so.
I think that means he's going to get like $110 million.
Yeah, I could see that. I wouldn't be shocked if he does exceed that. Just, I don't know, like big game player, just like guy who hits tanks. Sure. Like, I do believe he could keep hitting tanks for a while. He is one of the best just home run hitters in the game.
One of the best tanks.
But yeah, like, you called him the best pure hitter. He is, I guess there are a couple of ways one could say that. He's the best pure hitter. He's also pure hitter, and that's it. So, that does constrain his market. It limits the potential landing spots. But they seem to like him there. The fans like him. Like, maybe that's kind of overpay for the marquee value of a guy you've like having around. Yeah. So, okay. I guess I'll go, this is one of those where the upside isn't great, but maybe it's lower risk. I guess I'll take the under on Justin Verlander.
Yeah.
At $22 million.
Yeah. Why is he getting more money than he did last year?
Yeah, this is like a qualifying offer amount for him.
Right.
Not that he has a qualifying offer, but yeah, that seems a little rich. Now, he did absolutely pitch quite a bit better later in the season and looked, if not like vintage Verlander, at least like absolutely someone you would want to have in your starting rotation potentially. But given the advanced age and some of the struggles this year and, durability concerns and all the rest of it, someone will want him. He can get a deal, but would it be $22 million at this stage? I'm skeptical. So, like maybe if it's 15 or something instead, then I'm getting $7 million, but also the $10 million bonus if I pick in the right direction at least. Correct. So that's what I'm banking on.
I think that's a good pick. Here's my next, hopefully good pick, which is sort of a counterweight, I guess, to the Diaz selection. I'm going to take the under on Devin Williams at 4 years and 68.
I almost did that, yeah.
I think that Devin Williams is better than he pitched this last year. And he did course correct, right? And things got better for him as they kind of went along toward the end there. But 68, that's too much. I think that's too much for Williams. I do think that he, if you are looking for a closer and you don't want to pay up for Edwin Diaz and you're nervous about Suarez's velocity potentially declining and his track record, maybe you look at Devin Williams and are like, oh, well, this is a good opportunity. But part of that value proposition is that you can get him on the cheap relative to his past production. So I just don't buy it,
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I'm with you. I mean, his FIP and XFIP basically looked like old Devin Williams. So I'm sure there will be interest. And
totally.
And we know that teams are evaluating not so much based on the ERA and, not based on wins or whatever for starters. They're looking at the underlying numbers. But yeah, it is kind of tough when you have someone who had a near 5 ERA, lost his hold on the closer role, and if the Yankees were treating him that way, they're looking at the underlying stats too, and his stuff is pretty undiminished, but there are command issues. It was just a weird year, and maybe someone just says, I don't know, just everything went wrong and bad luck in New York and who knows, right? But the Yankees did decide that they couldn't keep running him out there. Now, maybe that's partly because when a guy blows a bunch of games for you, even if you do believe that he's going to right the ship at some point, it's just tough to sell to the team and the fans to just keep running him out there. So, yeah, if this were a year ago, he'd blow by this number.
Oh, yeah.
And definitely
he'd be looking at Diaz money.
Yeah, we'll overlook the weird, volatile, mercurial performance he had this year. But yeah, I think it's a solid pick. Okay, my second to last pick, I believe. What am I going to do here? I guess I'll go, I don't know. I feel like I'm in the territory where I'm not feeling strongly about anything anymore, which is a credit to MLB Trade Rumors. And by the way, love the work they do over there. And this is never meant as a criticism of them, really. Yeah. It's, anytime to do a ranking and produce a ranking from scratch is far harder than to isolate single picks, cherry pick certain picks and say, oh, I disagree with this one. So it makes sense that, generally we're right on the whole with these draft picks because we're selectively picking the ones that stand out to us, and we don't have to do the hard work of putting the projection on the player in the first place. I guess I don't feel strongly about this one, but I guess I'll take the under on Dylan Cease. They have him at 189. It seems reasonable. And again, there aren't great aces available this offseason. You've got Cease, you've got Fromber, you've got Imai. There's just no doubter top of the rotation type there. So maybe someone who just says, well, we need the best available starter decides that that's Dylan Cease. But this is almost more of a maybe he doesn't get 7 years. Maybe he just gets 5 or 6 or something. That's basically what this is. So yeah, Dylan Cease under at 189.
I'm going to take the over. This is kind of limited impact potentially, but I bet the bonus would be more than the delta, but I'm going to take the over on Tyler Rogers at 2 years and $18 million. That feels too low. That feels too low. I found Ben's argument about like the market kind of giving you a sense of how teams value that guy relative to like what the projections might inspire you to think to be instructive. And I think he does. I don't know that he does better than 2 years, but I feel like the AAV will be a little bit higher than that than getting to 18. That feels too low. So I'm taking over on Rodgers. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So we each have one pick left to play with. Yeah, I'm scanning my options here. I don't know. I think I'm tempted to do this, but I'm going to take an over because it'll make me feel good to end on an up note. I'm going to take the over on Ranger Suarez. So, I just talked about how the starting pitching market isn't super strong. They have Ranger at 115.
Yeah.
Which, again, all of these are fairly reasonable, but I could see him doing a bit better than that. 115, 5 years. He's only 30 years old. This is like maybe he gets 6 years or something, right? And so I'm taking the over on Ranger. And, he's had really good results. He's been consistent. He's kind of overshadowed because he's just been in that stacked Phillies rotation where, he'll be like the fourth starter or something, and he's really excellent and maybe doesn't entirely fit the profile of like modern successful starting pitcher in some respects. But, he's been pretty consistent and pretty durable. And I'm going to guess that someone goes a little longer on him.
Do I want to end optimistically or do I want to be sassy?
Or do you want to win?
Well, I want to win, but I'm going to take the under on Alonso, who they have at 4 years and 110 million.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the thing about Pete Alonso. Let me tell you about Pete Alonso. I think, well, first of all, he's not getting 7 years. I find that to be, and they didn't allege that to be clear, but Pete Alonso has reportedly said that he is interested in a 7-year contract, which, like, again, I don't want to sound anti-player, but I also want to say, hey, good luck, buddy. That doesn't seem likely to me. I do imagine that there might just be a great pull for him to go back to the Mets, which might be overstating things because here's the thing I actually want to say about Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso, he can play first base, but there might come a time where Pete Alonso is just better served to DH regularly, and the Mets maybe don't want to clog that spot because there might come a time when Juan Soto is best served by DHing primarily, although that might happen after 4 years. So maybe it'd be fine. But if he signs a 7-year deal, that would be potentially disastrous. So I just think that like he doesn't come with a lot of flexibility attached, both literal and figurative. I don't know that he'll do a lot less. I don't know that he'll do a lot less, but we've kind of seen this guy's market evolve. Yes. Now, he obviously had a much better season going into free agency this year than the last time. So you figure he'll do better than he did last time. But is he going to do $110 million?
Yeah.
I don't know.
A year older? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it seems like about the right number, but it could easily end up under that number. So, okay, yeah, this is good. We'll monitor this. We'll track it. We'll have it in the usual places where we track these things. It'll be on the wiki, et cetera. Maybe it'll be on the EW stats site. And I listed like almost half the guys on the list on my draft board, which I think you'd think maybe I'd have fewer on the draft board because, again, there weren't that many enticing prospects here. But I think I ended up with more just because I didn't feel that strongly about anyone. Yeah. So I kind of like listed half the guys. I'm like, I guess I could see. Anyway, I considered like under on Imai at 150. I considered under on Polanco at 42 because, maybe he gets a 2-year deal or so, but coming off his heroics, I had a bunch of other unders. I even had an over on Cody Ponce. Maybe someone believes in the transformation. Yeah, I could see that. I
had an over on him. I had an over on, I could see Real Muto doing better than 2 years and 30 million. Probably more on the AAV side than the years side, just because like, sure, he's been a 2 WAR guy for the last couple of seasons, but he is the best option at catcher, like dramatically. I know that maybe Ben saw less daylight between him and like Caratini and Jansen, but I didn't. So like I could see him doing better. I could see Woodruff doing worse than 3 years and 66 million because I expect he'll get 2 instead of 3. I could see Fromber's market going any which way. So that's why I stayed away from it. Like earlier in the day, I was like, oh, maybe he'll do better than 5 years and 150. And then I was like, no, he won't. And then I was like, yeah, he will. And then I didn't draft him. I could see Josh Naylor doing worse than 5 years and 90 million. I don't know what Luis Ariza's contract is going to look like. So I stayed away from that. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see. Play along at home, and we will return to this and tally up our scores when all is said and done, and also when it's in progress. Okay. Meant to say, by the way, I think of the Rockies as a chaotic good team. That's their alignment. They try to do the right thing, but just in a kind of chaotic way. Also, I'm afraid we didn't fully do Scott Boras's quips justice. We hadn't seen the full transcript of his Bregman and Bellinger comments, for instance, so I'll play him for you. Here he is on Bregman.
Now, we learned a lot about Bregman in 25, because in Boston, prior to 25, they had a lot of lineup do-not holes. And certainly prior to 25, Boston has been a kind of a club that's been, has Duncan well below the playoff line. So I think it was a bad roast in Beantown. And certainly, and give the owners credit in 25. You know, they went out and spent some Starbucks to bring in a Bregman blend that led them to the playoffs. So I'm sure the Boston fans don't want this to be just a cup of coffee. And no one wants a Brexit.
It's really something when you watch these videos and listen to them. You hear the repressed snickering from the collected baseball writers in the gaggle. Boras really takes his time unspooling these things because, you know, it's all just coming to him in the moment. And I'll leave you with this full extended Bellinger riff because we were talking about the Goose comparison. Actually, he worked pretty much every Top Gun character or catchphrase into this spiel. I will warn you, this goes on for a little while. Here it is.
When you look at 25, season 25, I'd say among all the free agent outfielders, he was the top gun of the class. You know, he was defensively certainly a versatile viper in the outfield, playing both first base and all 3 outfield positions. And he was kind of offensively a middle lineup Merlin in the sense that he felt that, you know, providing power and production. The other thing about Belly that's kind of unique for a guy his age, under 30, that, you know, he's played in all 3 markets, L.A., Chicago, New York. And so really in many ways he's an urban maverick, without a doubt. So I think that when you think about what he's done in an LA market, he was kind of Hollywood ringing for, you know, a championship, MVP. He was kind of a Windy City Wolfman and getting the comeback player of the year. And in New York, he was a true Iceman, cooling any thoughts that he couldn't hit behind Judge and lead the Yankees to a playoffs. So, and the other thing about Bellinger this year is that he doesn't have that the qualifying offer is that, that goose is gone. So he's really out of it. So I think that, when it comes to Bellinger, there's no question that, the teams have the need to belly proceed.
A need to belly proceed is just diabolical. Also, we said maybe he would stay away from plays on words based on Asian names. No, he did not. He had a Ha-Sung Kim quip. Well, I think Kim is a hot song of the shortstop charts, no question. I think the availability of defensive premium shortstops in this market is very, very slim. So if you're looking for a premium defensive shortstop to play, I think it's HSK. You know, as corny and hackneyed as this can be, and it's so corny that it sort of circles all the way around to being kind of funny again, but it still is so absurd that the most successful sports agent of all time, an absolute baseball power broker, a guy who's made many millions for players and also for himself, does this and is just so clearly tickled by doing this. This man is the most successful figure in his field, super agent Scott Boras, and yet it seems like the highlight of his job is getting to regale the writers with whatever tortured quips he can come up with. It is both terrible and truly special. We'll have some awards reactions for you next time, whatever reactions we have to the results announced this week. Maybe we can do some emails. We'll see. In the meantime, you can support Effectively Wild on Patreon by going to patreon.com/effectivelywild and signing up to pledge some monthly or yearly amount to help keep the podcast going, help us stay ad-free, and get yourself access to some perks, as have the following 5 listeners: Tom Dever, Matthew Stone, Timothy Sienko, Christopher Petit, and Joyce Lee. Thanks to all of you. Patreon perks include access to the Effectively Wild Discord group for patrons only, monthly bonus episodes, prioritized email answers, playoff live streams, discounts on merch, and ad-free FanGraphs memberships, and so much more. Check out all the offerings at patreon.com/effectivelywild. If you are a Patreon supporter, you can message us through the Patreon site. If not, you can contact us via email. Send your questions, comments, intro and outro themes to podcast@fangraphs.com. You can rate, review, and subscribe to Effectively Wild on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, and other podcast platforms. You can join our Facebook group at facebook.com/group/effectivelywild. You can find the Effectively Wild subreddit at r/effectivelywild, and you can check the show notes for links to the stories and stats we cited today, as well as the site where you can sign up for Effectively Wild Secret Santa. Thanks to Shane McKeon for his editing and production assistance. We'll be back with one more episode before the end of the week. Talk to you then.
Well, it's moments like these that make you ask, how can you not be pedantic about baseball? If baseball were different, how different would it be? On the case with light riffing, all analytically. Cross-check and compile, find a new understanding on Effectively Wild. How can you not be pedantic? Yes, when it comes to baseball, how can you not be pedantic?